I recognize Mr. Curbelo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Administrator Fugate, thank you for your presence here this morning, and thank you for your service to the people of Florida over so many years. We remember you very fondly, and we miss you at times, so thank you very much. I represent South Florida, where a large portion of my district lives on or near the coast. One of the constant worries I hear from my constituents back home, especially in the Florida Keys, is the need to reform the National Flood Insurance Program. I'm a co-sponsor of the Flood Insurance Premium Parity Act, a bill which would extend the recent NFIP reforms to business properties and owner-occupied second homes. I feel it is critical these properties receive the same relief already provided to residential properties and single-family homes afforded to them under Biggert Waters Act of 2012. Can you share your thoughts on what best can be done to provide affordable flood insurance for my constituents? Do you feel that we should apply to commercial properties and second homes the same formula for yearly rate increases received by residential properties?
Well, first of all, y'all may miss me, but you got a great guy in Brian Kuhn, so the state's in good hands. You just opened up a very good philosophical debate and a can of worms of how far the flood insurance program should go. Here's my question. If the private insurance companies can't insure it, is it something that the federal government should assume the risk? Because we're doing risk transference. Anytime the private sector can't cover the risk and we take on that responsibility, you, the taxpayers, are backing it. That may be good policy. That may be the desire and the intent of Congress, which I would support if that's the desire. But I must always caution that in transferring that risk back to the flood insurance program, which is over $20 billion in debt, we have to understand that it is not an actuarially sound program. It will not be able to pay back its debt. And growing that exposure may be good policy, but I think it's one we need to go forward and understand what that risk is. The challenge is understanding the built infrastructure and how we protect that. But also, how do we enforce the future and ensure that we don't continue to grow that risk? And that does not mean we cannot build in coastal areas. It does mean we have to build differently. So I think the question that I would narrow back down to is, we've got a lot of businesses. We have a lot of homes. We have a lot of property that's exposed. Insurance is not available or not affordable. It will be a huge economic loss to local jurisdictions from tax-based losses, business losses, jobs loss. If it makes sense to insure that, then we will implement it. But I also caution that we have to make sure we don't set up an unfair system that continues to grow risk by allowing people then to build in areas without taking the steps, which can be more costly, but then transfer that risk back to us, the federal taxpayer. It's a shared responsibility. It is an interesting debate. We would be more than willing to engage in it. But I think we have to be upfront that there are many people, both in Congress and outside, who do not want to grow the flood insurance program and that exposure, and others who think they do. We would be interested in participating in that debate. But we really think this is the sense of Congress. We really need the guidance from Congress on what this should be.
Thank you, Mr. Fugate. And the state of Florida has learned a lot since 1992 and has changed a lot. Do you feel that the state is adequately prepared today for a potential storm? You referred to one earlier, a great Miami storm. Do you feel that we have done enough from your perspective to prepare and to mitigate potential damages?
I'll leave it to Brian to talk about what, under leadership, he and Governor Scott have been able to achieve. But I want to point out one thing that Florida did, and it was a hard, painful lesson. It was hard fought, and there's always attempts to take and walk back. But under Governor Bush, it was the establishment of statewide mandatory building codes. Learning the lessons of South Florida, but across the state. Probably the one thing that is saving taxpayers more money and making sure that you still have commercially available insurance for the wind pools is the fact that Florida did strengthen its building code, and it does enforce it across all counties and cities. It was a courageous step, given that many people said it would make homes unaffordable. The reality was, without that building code, they would have been uninsurable. And as we continue to see citizens shrink, as more people will buy into the Florida market, it is, I think, a testament to better built homes for the environment they're in. And this is the lesson I think all states should pay attention to. When you have the right building codes and land use to manage risk, that risk can come down to the point where it is insurable, and the private sector can do a better job of managing future risk without it defaulting back to federal programs.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.